Welcome to the HC Insider Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the commodities sector and the people within it. I'm your host, Paul Chapman. Today, we're talking ammonia. Currently a key product in fertilizer and certain plastics, it's also now being hailed as a potential big player in energy transition, notably green ammonia, which can either be used as a direct fuel in the combustion engine or as a carrier for the hydrogen molecule that will go into hydrogen fuel cells. Joining us to discuss is Christophe Savi. Christophe is Managing Director of Ammonia at Tramo, the global trading house that has traded ammonia, among other products, for 50 years. Christophe, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, how are you?
Great. I'm excited to have this discussion. I know it's a big topic. It's a hot topic, dare I say it. We're talking ammonia, green ammonia, and its potential role in the energy transition. You've been, as a company, trading ammonia for 50 years. As an individual, you're global head of trading for ammonia. Before we kind of get off into why there's so much interest and why there's a bright future here potentially, can you just give us a bit of an ammonia 101? Go back to our chemistry lessons. What is it? How's it produced? And where is it currently used?
Yes, thank you, Paul. Yeah, it's very important indeed to explain what ammonia is, because I'm not sure if people in the audience understand it or know it. I know that in my surroundings, in my family and friends, very often I have to explain what it is. So I know it's not very, very common and well known. These days, we're talking more about ammonia because it's a carrier for hydrogen. So what is important to remember is that it's made out of hydrogen, and hydrogen today is made out of natural gas, right? So basically, ammonia is a gas, which is a combination of hydrogen on one side and nitrogen on the other. So the nitrogen is coming from the air, the hydrogen is coming from water, right? So basically, you can crack both of them and make a molecule which is called NH3, right? And hydrogen is also those days produced out of natural gas, breaking the molecule and the methane, right? And then you get hydrogen. And this is this is how the producers are producing ammonia today. You have to probably understand that we are talking about 200 million tons in the world produced every year, and 95% of this production today is gas based, right? So this is clearly an issue when you're discussing about decarbonization, right? Which is a very hot topic these days. And there is another way of collecting hydrogen, right? Which can be done without this natural gas, and therefore without CO2 emission. So that's why today we are going to review what exists today, which is the world of yesterday, right? And what could be the market of tomorrow, right? So this is a very exciting time, because we know that you cannot change drastically the whole configuration of this market, but within 10-15 years will be a lot of changes. Well, I mean, in the next 50 years for sure, but in the next 10-15 years it will be exciting to be in this business for sure.
So staying on kind of the world of yesterday, the Haber-Bosch process comes around in the 1910s and launches the first green revolution, because it's a way of producing ammonia, which goes into fertilizer, providing nitrogen to plants at an industrial scale that allowed that first green revolution of industrial farming. So that's the current predominant use of ammonia. That process itself, I think, is highly energy intensive. It comes from natural gas is the least energy intensive, but you can get it out of coal and other things as well. Can you just orientate us as to how big that market is? The current flows of ammonia it's not transported as a gas; it's transported as anhydrous ammonia. Can you just set us up on the world of yesterday as you described it?
Yeah, well, in fact, it's not so much a green revolution which led to this creation of the Haber-Bosch, right? The Haber-Bosch was like a revolution in itself, because it allows production of ammonia in synthetic form, right? Because ammonia can be created on a natural form, but in a very limited quantities, and out of sudden being capable of producing it then we were able to feed the world, right? This is exactly what the fertilizer producers would explain, right? Say, well, without this Haber-Bosch process, we would not been able to grow the population to an extent of having close to 7 to 8 billion people to feed now, and probably 10 tomorrow. And it's clearly because of this, and thanks to this, right? So that was a revolution which was aimed to feed the population, right, to give them something to eat. And the focus was absolutely not on the energy side and on the pollution side. Of course, we are talking about a century ago, and then there were a series of revolutions, industrial revolutions, and improvements, which, of course, improved as well the way of consuming energy and producing ammonia. So, after many years, the consumption of energy was less important and is constantly improving, right? But still, there is no other way today, right? I mean, there is no other existing manner to produce ammonia than consuming a high level of energy, and that will be the same in the future. The only difference is that now we are capable of producing big quantities of green energy, right? So
Mm.
you were talking about the past, and I'm sorry, I'm going to the future again, but green ammonia, just quickly, green ammonia is nothing more than green energy, right? In reality, the revolution is at this level, at the energy level, more than on the ammonia level, which is going to be processed exactly the same way as before.
Yeah, we'll come on to it, as you say. So basically, the theory is at the moment, for the most part, ammonia has been produced by using hydrocarbon-based energy and intensively to make the ammonia. Whereas now, much in the same case as green hydrogen, now we have large quantities of economically sensible and available green power that you can use to crack and make the ammonia. And actually, the other bit that's like the other revolution is that ammonia itself is now being seen potentially as a fuel, both directly in combustion engines, but also in hydrogen fuel cells. I guess that gives our audience where we're going. I find it fascinating. Just want to understand, you're in the business of trading ammonia right now. Can you just, who produces ammonia, where is it produced, and then how is it traded, how is it transported?
Yes, the production globally is close to 200 million tons per year, as I said, and the trading market, the market in which we operate, is 10% that size, because most of the ammonia produced in the world is produced to make urea, right? To produce fertilizers. Beyond that, and ammonia is produced in areas where gas is available in a sufficient manner, right? So you're talking about the usual candidates, right? The Middle East, Russia, Caribs, the US, of course, and Indonesia. Places like this are exporting ammonia, right? Are net exporter of ammonia. Most of them didn't build an ammonia plant for the sake of exporting it, right? It's excess of ammonia because they are, most of them, urea or fertilizer producers, right? And they have excess of ammonia from time to time that they want to export. On the other side, you have exactly the opposite. You have consumers located, most of them in places where this natural gas is not available, and therefore there is no ammonia production. And you can have net fertilizer importers, right? But you can also have finished product, but you can also have other fertilizer producers lacking this raw material, like in India, for example, right? And more, we have industrial use of ammonia as well, because ammonia is primarily used as a fertilizer. But in the past 2 decades, we have seen the emergence of a very big market for synthetic plastics, engineering plastics, or textile. Ammonia is used to produce certain derivatives called acrylonitrile or caprolactam, which are they're very important as well in the way we produce certain goods, certain consumer goods, right? And those producers, they don't produce themselves their own ammonia. So the interesting part that we have a large appetite and a good appetite for ammonia in places where there is no ammonia available. In other places, excess of ammonia that cannot be consumed on site and need to be exported. Therefore, our business is right in the middle, right? It's
Yeah,
really
and it's been a lucrative, well, like all commodities. I mean, it's
Mm.
followed largely the super cycle, right? It was a fan. If I remember going to fertilizer conferences, and it was a fantastic time in the 2000s and early 2010s, and then it's been a rough market coinciding with lower prices, lots of cheaper natural gas. Can you just? I don't know if I'm fully right there, but I've got two questions. One is, yeah, has that market followed the sort of super cycle in general? And secondly, a more prosaic question would be, physically, how is ammonia transported? Because you don't transport it as a gas, right?
I'm going to answer the second question first, but
Yeah,
yes,
like Nixon.
yes, exactly. But we know, yes, we do transport it in the gas form, except that this is liquefied. So it is refrigerated ammonia, right? That we refrigerate at minus 33 degrees Celsius, and at that temperature, then it becomes liquid, and therefore you can of course transport more. We transport it by sea, by LPG carriers, exactly the same ships we're transporting butane or propane, right? Exactly the same technology, and the size of those shipments, right, in average, are ranging between 15,000 tons and 40,000 tons ships.
The same ships exactly, or do you have to have designated ships for ammonia? Because it is, of course, I believe,
No, exactly the
quite a
same.
caustic material. Okay.
Exactly the same. You just need to change. Of course, you have to clean the tank inside, right? Because you're not transporting the same gas, right? But once you clean the tank inside, then you can use the same ship for exactly the same. I mean, for those two products, for those LPGs on one side or ammonia. So when you are in this business, you're also very much focused on the LPG market, because this will be the market that will provide the shipping liquidity, right, to our ammonia market. Because of course those ships mostly have been made to transport LPG, which is by far much bigger market than the ammonia market, as you can imagine. So
Mm.
we used to say, I guess that the confusion comes from the fact that when certain ships are turned to ammonia, then it's for a long time, because the ship owners will not do this for just for one single voyage in a spot voyage left and right. They would like long commitments, because it's very costly to change grade. But otherwise, technically, it can do both. Right?
Fascinating. So it is costly to go through the cleaning process.
It's costly, yes, because it requires times to clean the tank, and then you have also to inject nitrogen to clean it, etc. So it's a very complex scheme.
Fascinated to see, because like I alluded to earlier, sort of those really good times in fertilizer trading, and it
Yeah, the
was
super
sort of
cycle.
saying,
Yeah. Well, yes, indeed, of course, right. We cannot deny that the prices went up big time during the end of the first decade of the century, 2008, 2009, and the ammonia prices were also sky high. Well, just to give you, because here we are talking about numbers, just to give a level, we were used to trade ammonia at around $300 per ton, and then out of sudden it went up to $700 to $800 per ton, right? But of course, that was exaggerated. It did not last too long, but it was following the super cycle, of course, trend. The difficulty with ammonia is, then, as I said, big portion of the buyers are fertilizers buyers, and then there is a limit to price they can pay, because it goes to the production of agriculture, and it goes to underdeveloped countries, or in developing countries which cannot afford certain prices. And this is also one of the big question mark for the future, because you mentioned earlier to use ammonia as an energy, as a fuel, as a maritime fuel, right? And it's possible that certain markets, certain users and consumers of that ammonia in that form can afford a price that, on the other side, the fertilizer producers could not afford, right? And I think
mm,
it's a limitation to where prices could go. So at the time, clearly the market was really bullish and had created a bubble, which very quickly went down. And it took the market a long time to recover because the immediate reaction of this, but it attracted a lot of new producers, right? Attracted by those numbers, and there were a series of
And
projects.
lower natural gas at the time, right? I remember,
Exactly, low natural
in
gas.
2012, I remember meeting you, I think, in Boston, and it was the whole story was just how much new production was getting committed in the US Gulf, right? Just as a result of natural gas.
Exactly, yeah, no, exactly right. You also have to know that this gas sometimes is coming in places where it will have to be consumed or flare. So you could have very, very cheap gas. And then a lot of projects were born on this basis. On top of this, you had the shale gas revolution in the US, and the US became out of sudden exporter of gas and derivatives and ammonia included, right? So all this production coming in the market literally overflowed the market, and we had I would say 5 to 6 years of technically long market, right, with a lot of supply available and the consumption a little bit behind. Because in the end, there is a limit to the number of fertilizer you can put on the ground, right? If you don't have new technological revolution, right? The industry brought those products, right, that I mentioned, acrylonitrile and caprolactam, plastics and textile, and indeed, right, there is also the need for this for those products, but to a point. Now we are talking about something new, right? We are talking about a new use of ammonia, which never really existed before, right? If you consider it as an energy, it's a third area in which ammonia is going to be consumed, and therefore
Mm.
now the picture is going to be opposite, right? From long to short is going to take a few years. So the difficulty for our market today and the producers first would be to be able to come together with the growth, because demand is there, right? But it will be more difficult to bring this new production in place, especially when you're talking about green technology, which is at the early stage, of course.
And it's fascinating the parallels you alluded to there. That in much the same way as ethanol or renewable diesel, you're competing with food once again.
Hmm.
And those are two different pricing differentials. Okay, so let's see if I can get it right. So I think we've got a clear picture of ammonia and its current uses and its role in the chemical value chain. The idea is that ammonia can be, so on the one side is producing ammonia, replacing hydrocarbons by renewable fuels, so basically wind and solar, to generate electricity, to crack the nitrogen and the water to create ammonia. That ammonia can then actually act as a fuel because it's much easier to liquefy than, say, hydrogen. It can act as a hydrogen carrier. It can go directly into combustion engines, although I think you have to mix it with a little bit of
Some
diesel
fuel
or
oil,
something like that.
yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and it obviously then acts as a CO2 free combustion. There is issues about nitrogen oxide being a far worse greenhouse gas than CO2, or far more potent. But the real kind of interest lies in this idea that ammonia then becomes a really efficient hydrogen carrier. It can then be split and the hydrogen goes into the fuel cell. Am I on the right track there?
Yes, correct. Just to be crystal clear, the ammonia is always the same, right? You're only producing ammonia anyway, right? What would differ is how you produce it, and if you produce it green, so in other words, using green energy, therefore your cost of production is high because this is a new technology. You need to use very expensive electrolyzers, and you need a lot of energy as well based on wind and solar. But that is not really the problem. The problem is that it's costly, right, to organize. If you want to compare with an existing average plant today, an ammonia plant today, in average, would produce 400 to 700,000 tons per year, right? It's a lot of energy that you need to repeat. the same or even half of it with green energy. So you need a lot of that green energy. You need to be able to control it, to store it, to produce ammonia with electrolyzers, which are expensive, etc. And then after this, it would be exactly the same. It's a Haber-Bosch process that will produce ammonia. And then this ammonia will be, well, they call it gray. Some call it brown or gray if it's based on gas, right? Because there were CO2 emitted during the production of this ammonia. Or you call it green because it was produced using green energy. Then this ammonia can go everywhere, right? But of course, we are wondering if you can sell today green ammonia, which is very expensive to produce, to fertilizer producers in Africa, for example, right? So logically, we think that this green ammonia, which also the producers, right, of this green ammonia will want to target much lucrative customers, right? And they don't think about the fertilizer people. They think about this maritime fuel or the ammonia as a carrier for hydrogen, right? And so it's like an entire business model. It's like a business in parallel of the existing one, as if in the future we would have the gray ammonia, right? That because we will need this ammonia anyway, right? It cannot disappear. I mean, the green ammonia cannot substitute today the gray ammonia. It will take decades before it could anyway. This ammonia will be needed and will be probably cheaper, or it could be limited as well because it depends on the regulation. Certain markets, like very mature and developed market, like the US or the EU, right, could tax, right, or regulate this gray ammonia. But on the other side, you have the green ammonia that cannot go everywhere either because it's very, very expensive to produce. And again, it will take decades also for them to reach a production cost capable of competing with the gray ammonia to other markets, right? So it's unclear on how those two it's the same product, right? But it's two categories of the same product will be mixed in the first place.
Exactly analogous to hydrogen, right? It was exactly the same scenario in that actually it will be a policy driven as to be able to achieve consumption of green hydrogen because economically it doesn't make sense to produce over grey hydrogen.
It does not even exist today, right? There's no ships capable of doing it in a very large scale, right? So this is clearly a solution, but it will not produce any CO2, right? But if this same ammonia is produced using gas, right? This is what they call well to tank, right? Well to tank, it will be producing CO2. And then when you consume this ammonia, it produces zero CO2, right? So the question is, do I want to participate in a cycle with absolutely zero CO2 in the entire chain? Of course, the answer is yes, but you can't do it right away. You will have to go step by step, and probably in a transition time during which it will be okay to burn, right? If I may say, to burn ammonia, which is produced based on gas, because at least it does not create CO2 emission when it is burned, right? And then it will favor the emergence of more green ammonia plants down the road, right? Because then if you are able to satisfy demand, you can entertain it and create the ground for more investment to green technology, allowing more green ammonia to be available. Because of today, again, it says no way you can substitute 200 million tons of gray ammonia, which is needed in the world.
So on the production side, you've got effectively at the moment, there's no real market supporting necessarily. Yeah, there's no real market at the moment in any capacity, right? There's a lot of test cases. The cost, the electrolysis technology around green ammonia is still very expensive. It can't compete. It can't get anywhere near the penetration needed into that 200 million ton market you discuss. This is more sort of theoretical at the moment, but what it has going for it compared to transporting, if you're going to use it as hydrogen, transporting hydrogen is it's much easier to transport as liquid ammonia. And obviously, that said, there's a supply chain existing already to be able to do that. You've talked about its direct use as a maritime fuel. I did mention that, I don't know my chemistry here, but your NOxes coming off, that's also quite a potent greenhouse gas as well, right? So is that really a solution, just using it as a maritime fuel?
Yes, it is because those NOx are quite easy to capture, right? There is a technology for this, and this is affordable. I guess that most of the ship owners will be able to capture a very large percentage of those NOx. So all in all, the balance is positive. And when you compare this with hydrogen, right? If you the pollution today, right? The CO2 pollution, sorry, the CO2 emission is made out of the hydrogen production, right? I mean, the goal is really to replace the hydrogen production, right? So if you want to transport hydrogen, then you're not really solving the problem, because I guess that hydrogen, apparently there's certain studies saying that it will pollute even more, right, than the fuel oil itself, right? So the goal is really to limit the production of hydrogen, right, in the form of gas, right, coming out from the gas today, right? But otherwise, ammonia as a fuel is a solution if you can do it.
So the Nirvana-like state is that you make green ammonia. That is a really efficient way of transporting the hydrogen fuel using existing infrastructure without all of the issues of piping hydrogen here, there, and everywhere. And this is the bit I guess I don't understand. At the point of consumption in a hydrogen fuel cell, you crack it to produce the hydrogen. Where are we at on the technology there? Because I was reading yesterday a 2006 study by the Department of Energy in the US that was basically saying we're abandoning research because it's really any ammonia getting into the fuel cell ruins the fuel cell, and we don't think this is going to be a viable, at least for now. That's 14 years ago. Where are we now in that?
Well, true that the calorific value of ammonia is pretty low, right? Twice less than fuel oil, right? So basically, to cover the same distance, you would have to consume twice more. And if, as we said before, the production of green ammonia is expensive, you see, compared to oil, you have a long way to go before before you can really consider it as a viable a solution, because you need a lot of improvement in terms of cost, but as well, we hope that the ship engines will improve as well, and will be new technology available. If you talk to ship owners, they would be delighted to explain to you how they can improve many things on that front. But without those improvements, it's unlikely to see ammonia as a fuel before probably more than a decade for sure, right? I mean it's impossible for me to say, but it's not the primary target of ammonia. So that's why I guess there's a lot of considerations made as ammonia as a carrier for hydrogen, as long as you can produce this hydrogen green, which is the case. It's just a little bit expensive, but we are coming closer to affordable numbers. And then you transport it in the form of ammonia, because it's right to say it. The infrastructure, the supply chain is there, and major for it, right? But then you wonder, okay, what's the point then to break it down to hydrogen again, right? Because then once you go to the port of destination, what do you do with this hydrogen? I suppose that you want to spread it in the country as an energy, right? But where are the markets mature as well to distribute this hydrogen, right? Except maybe a little bit in the US, in the US Gulf, right? Maybe certain countries in Northwest Europe, but that's about it. They would also need huge investments, right? And I suppose that this analysis that you read was also mentioning the large amount of money, the billions of dollars that you need to create this network for hydrogen. So this is maybe not the best solution either. And now we are looking at it differently and say, well, maybe we can use it as ammonia itself. Indeed, the calorific value, the energy value compared to hydrogen is much less, but there is at least a chance that it could be ready sooner, and at least participate, right, to reduce those CO2 emissions. At least it would be the first step before we can do something different.
Yeah, I appreciate it's a complicated picture or a cloudy crystal ball would be a better description. So I understand something. Is the proposal, because at the moment I kind of get this, I get the concept of green ammonia. there's obviously also green hydrogen. Is there the theory out there that people would make green hydrogen, then transport it as ammonia, and then crack it back into hydrogen at the other end? Or is it much more efficient just to make green ammonia and then use that as the carrier for hydrogen?
Yeah, I think, no, you're right. I mean, it's exactly the main question everybody's asking himself, right, at the moment. For sure, transporting hydrogen today in big volumes, right? I mentioned ammonia, you can transport 25,000 tons of ammonia on one ship. We know how to do it. We do this for decades. It's well known. You have a lot of facilities, organized storage, etc. Hydrogen, no, that does not exist. You don't have a ship today capable of transporting hydrogen in that form, right? I mean, it's just technologically complicated, almost impossible today, right? There is no ship owners capable of doing it. So you cannot transport hydrogen, right? Full stop. Today, it's impossible. Not in large scale. So you cannot create a market out of it. But you can do it with ammonia. So I guess that logically, ammonia as a carrier for hydrogen to certain areas where they have the ability to distribute hydrogen. As I said, in the US, maybe you can do this, right? Maybe you can import ammonia in the US, crack it down to back to hydrogen and distribute it. That works. But in other places in the world where you don't have this network, hydrogen network, I'm saying, available, then maybe it's better to invest directly into an ammonia distribution system inland, right? Then you import ammonia and you don't crack it down and back to hydrogen, right? You distribute it in the form of ammonia in refrigerated manner, in pressurized manner. You can build pipe or move it by rail cars or by trucks sometimes if possible. That does exist, right? And that is probably the easiest way to go.
Just to be clear, though, it is technologically feasible that you can have ammonia on site, I don't know, next to your car or household, and crack it into hydrogen and then put it in the fuel cell.
Technologically, yes, there's probably a future for that kind of use. But let's not forget that ammonia remains a gas, right? And a dangerous gas to inhale, right? So I'm not sure that people would like to have ammonia tank as small as it could be next to their place or in their garage. I think that point will remain a limit to the expansion of ammonia or hydrogen, by the way.
I don't know if it's an unfair question. I guess my original question was, does it still make sense to generate green hydrogen, convert it into ammonia, transport, or are you more calorifically efficient to just make ammonia straight off and use that and then turn that into hydrogen down the road?
It's necessary. First, let me say this. It's necessary today to produce green ammonia, right? Anyway, because if you want to reach the targets that we are aiming for CO2 emissions, right? The way we produce ammonia today is is too much CO2 emitting, right? So I don't know. Depending on numbers, you can consider 1.5 to 2 tons of CO2 emitted for 1 ton of ammonia produced today using hydrogen based on natural gas. So you have to do something about it, right? So we have to go to green production, right? So I'm not so sure about ammonia carrier as for hydrogen, right, or for the shipping industry. But for sure, the production of green ammonia will be there. Once it will be there, it will open new gates, right? New territories, and that this hydrogen carrier is clearly one, right? So it will not make sense in every places of the world, and probably in very few places of the world it would make sense, like in Japan, for example, right? You need to have a clear will from the government to invest massively on this. I mean, it can be used as an energy. It's a fantastic energy, hydrogen, of course, right? It's the ultimate energy, the best of every energy available on Earth. But you have to have the distribution system ready for this. I'm not sure if there is many places in the world where it would be the case. In other places, you could still use ammonia. No need to crack it back to hydrogen. Use it on the form of ammonia and use it as an energy. Of course, the energy value is much less, but still it could make sense because it could bring solutions in certain part of Africa, for example, right? But if you're capable of producing ammonia, right, out of green energy, right, solar and wind, and if your technology is sufficiently advanced to be economical and you control it, then you will be able to produce ammonia everywhere in the world, right? There's a big difference in the future with the world of today, where, as I explained before, we have to come from countries where natural gas is available to countries where precisely the natural gas is not available, but ammonia is needed, right? But otherwise, if you consider that you have wind and sun everywhere on Earth, right? So basically, you can produce ammonia everywhere on Earth. Then the scale of ammonia plant can also be smaller. Today, as I said, 400 to 700,000 tons per year is the average size. But if you can produce it everywhere, you don't need to produce that big volume anymore, right? You can go to 50, 60,000, even lower. And then it could become a solution, an energy solution locally in certain places, right? Where you don't need to invest massively in very expensive infrastructure to distribute that ammonia. Concretely, let's say you go in the middle of Africa, and there is an energy needed over there, and you produce 5,000 tons of ammonia per year. It's very small scale plant, right? You're using the sun, for example, and you can produce it. Then it takes you just a few trucks to distribute this ammonia around, and this ammonia can be burned as a fuel, right? And you can create electricity with this ammonia. You don't need massive investments, right? With hydrogen, it's completely different. Hydrogen will I mean, it's a very dangerous gas, right? In terms of safety, you also have to consider that building hydrogen tank everywhere would be very costly and also very dangerous. So I doubt it could be done everywhere, right? So that's why the ammonia as an energy will come naturally once we'll be able to control, right, sufficiently well the production of green ammonia. And the production of green ammonia today is is looking at those markets in the future, right? Because of course this is a dream. This is a target. This is where we want to go. But in the meantime, they will have to produce ammonia for exactly the same consumer of ammonia today, right? Whether they like it or not, it will be the market base. Will be the market base of today.
There's no differential pricing right now or policies.
No,
Where does that leave an ammonia trader? Because you can kind of, I can imagine that's a real challenge, right? And a lot of this is so analogous with what else is going on. Is you've got this future use case of ammonia as an energy. It's really hard to tell whether that's 10 years or 20 years. There is policy support, and the need for the ammonia industry itself to start producing green ammonia, given how carbon intensive it is and how impactful that will be now and then certainly in the future. I mean, that makes it quite a challenging environment, I imagine, for both producers to manage investment and also for, I guess, how to position yourself as a trader.
a commodity trader has a role to play as long as the world would be imperfect, right? The day I just said,
Yeah.
if you have a production at every corner, for every street, and a consumer there, then I suppose we don't need traders. So we are here to regulate the market because by principle it's imperfect. The production will never match exactly the consumption in one place, and there will always be excess of ammonia somewhere and need of ammonia somewhere else. On top of everything else, the ammonia is also a gas, so which we tend to store in limited capacities. So when it's very easy to get out of stock, and then the consumers they prefer to rely on traders like us that would put the supply chain and the logistic at the center of their business model, right? So we are specialized in logistic, and there will be logistic issues or logistic opportunities everywhere all the time. So that's the future for traders. Is exactly the same principle of what has made the traders, how can I say, in the middle of everything until now. So I think that the future for us, right, will become clearly what we want it to be, right? Because if we don't participate to this green revolution, then it will be more complicated for the producers to come with solutions. They need people like us to tell them, look, if you want to produce green ammonia, we clearly entertain this, right? Well, and the world needs it. We need more ammonia by definition, and then it has to be green, of course. So we are here to facilitate this, right? To entertain it, and therefore, if that ammonia will be able to be moved, right, and therefore exists, right, then the market will come. If on the other side we do nothing, right? I'm talking about us because we are an important trader in the marketplace, but there are also other traders, right? So all the traders collectively, if we do nothing about it, then we leave it to the producers. They will have difficulties to justify the investments. Then maybe you can also imagine that after a period of time, the potential markets for this green ammonia will disappear, right? Because right, if there is no way to supply this ammonia, then they will look for an alternative. So that's what I'm saying. The future will be what we collectively, the traders, want it to be. So Tramo, we want to take the lead in this and show to everybody that we are taking all the ammonia that can be produced in the world, because the market is there if we are able to supply it, right? So it's very important that this production, this green production, becomes mature, if I may say, relatively rapidly, right? No more than 10, 15 years. Otherwise, I guess it will be a different animal.
It's a phenomenal opportunity when you step back and you think that here is a product that's primarily being used 90%, as you say, in fertilizer, which is sort of ring-bounded by the agricultural markets, which are also always advancing in efficiency, to suddenly saying, actually, ammonia could be the, if not the fuel, then certainly the conduit for the future energy economy. That's your playing field just got substantially bigger.
Exactly right. It's something that we could not expect 20 years ago, right? We knew that it was possible to produce ammonia with electrolyzers. I mean, it's not a new technology. I can't say how long it's in existence, but it's something that more than 50 years for sure, right? But it was never really explored in a large scale because it was just too expensive. There is no willingness to invest time and money in green energy production, right? What the big difference today is that the majors, the markets, are clearly saying, "Hey, we want to produce wind farms, right? So we want to, I mean, you have an announcement about a new wind farm, the larger in the world every day, almost these days. Those guys are changing the market, not us, right? Because they are there to say the green energy is going to be available, and we are going to invest massively on it. I mean, we're talking about a lot of money there, right? We, as traders, we can just adapt, right? We are not here to lead those investments. But now that those big guys, big boys are making those big investments, the energy will be there. So indeed, we are in the middle of a market which can grow a multiple of 2, 3, 5 times its present size, because investments are being made at the moment, right, on the pure energy side.
Yep. Well, it's certainly a fascinating space. I mean, we're all seeing a lot more interest in ammonia than there was 5 years ago. And again, it's as with all these things, it's challenging and tricky to navigate, but the rewards are there, and certainly this is a confluence of trends that are supporting green ammonia. Well, I've really enjoyed the discussion, Christophe, and thanks so much for your unique insights.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you for the invitation. It was nice talking to you as well.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support the show, please give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. To find out more about HC Insider and Human Capital, a search firm dedicated to the commodities sector, go to www.hcinsider.global, where you'll find more original content on the commodities sector and more details on our offering as a search firm and our locations around the world. Thanks again for listening.